Insects are often looked at as an annoyance or even a nuisance. Some people have even gone as far as calling them a menace. But did you know that insects play a very important role in our ecosystem? They help pollinate plants, break down dead organic matter, and serve as a food source for other animals. But not all insects are beneficial to humans. In fact, some can be downright harmful. Welcome back to the channel. Today we will be talking about one such insect that causes a lot of damage to crops and negatively affects the livelihood of farmers. This is the African sugarcane borer. When most people think of dangerous insects, their minds immediately go to large predatory beetles, stinging wasps, or blood-sucking mosquitoes. While these insects are certainly capable of inflicting harm, there are many other arthropods that pose a threat to humans. One such creature is the African sugarcane borer, a small moth whose larvae wreak havoc on crops throughout sub-Saharan Africa. As a result, this insect has had a profound impact on both the history and economy of the region. This moth is known by several names. It is called Eldana saccharina by scientists. Other names by which it is known include brown sugarcane borer, African sugarcane moth, and brown sugarcane moth. There are many reasons for this. The insect is found across a wide geographical area and it infests a variety of plants. While it is known as the sugarcane borer, it also attacks other crops like maize, sorghum, bamboo, pineapple, and banana. In addition, this pest tends to cause more damage in certain areas than others. For example, its populations tend to fluctuate greatly depending on the season. Sometimes they explode and cause widespread devastation, and sometimes they disappear entirely. These fluctuations may explain why the pest is known by different names in different places. That being said, the African sugarcane borer is most active in the warmer months of the year. Adult moths mate soon after emerging from their cocoons. Then they lay their eggs, which hatch within a week. Immediately after hatching, the young larvae begin their quest for food. They start off by eating the surface of the leaves of sugarcane crops and other plants. However, as they grow larger, they begin to bore into the sugarcane stalks themselves. As the larvae feed inside the sugarcane stalks, they weaken the plants and reduce the amount of sugar produced. They also make the plants more vulnerable to diseases and fungal infections. The African sugarcane borer is considered a generalist feeder because it feeds on a wide variety of plants. The larvae typically live inside the stems of their host plants where they leave behind a sticky residue. This substance serves as a medium for the spores of the fungus Fusarium oxysporum to grow on. The fungus then enters the plant's vascular system and blocks the flow of water and nutrients. This leads to the death of the plant, which becomes wilted and brown. The larvae continue to feed on the plant until it is completely destroyed. While the African sugarcane borer is mostly associated with sugarcane, it is actually a polyphagous pest, meaning that it feeds on a wide variety of plants. When sugarcane is not available, it will feed on sorghum, maize, pineapple, banana, and a variety of other crops. It is also known to infest wild grasses and weeds. While it is mostly considered a pest, it can serve as a food source for some animals, including birds and reptiles. However, these animals are rarely seen feeding on the larvae, perhaps because they are toxic, or because they prefer to feed on other insects. The African sugarcane borer is native to sub-Saharan Africa, and has been a problem for farmers for many years. It was first identified as a serious pest in the early 20th century, and remains a major challenge today. While the damage caused by the African sugarcane borer varies depending on the severity of the infestation, it can be severe enough to wipe out entire crops. This can have devastating consequences for farmers who rely on these crops for their livelihoods. In addition to reducing crop yields, the African sugarcane borer also makes the harvesting process more difficult. The larvae tend to congregate in the trash left behind after the sugarcane has been harvested, which makes it more difficult for workers to collect the remaining cane. The larvae are also known to contaminate the sugarcane juice, which can make it unfit for processing. Although the African sugarcane borer is a relatively recent addition to the list of agricultural pests, it has already had a profound impact on the history of Africa. The first major outbreak of the disease occurred in 1908 in South Africa. At the time, sugarcane was an important crop in the region, and the borer's arrival caused widespread devastation. The outbreak led to the development of new farming practices and the introduction of more resistant plant varieties. However, the African sugarcane borer has continued to pose a threat to crops in the region ever since. In the past, the African sugarcane borer was mostly controlled through the use of pesticides. However, these chemicals can be harmful to humans and animals if not used properly. In addition, the African sugarcane borer has developed resistance to some pesticides, making them less effective. More recently, farmers have begun to use a combination of methods to control the pest. This includes planting crops at different times of the year, using trap crops to lure the larvae away from valuable crops, and introducing natural predators of the pest. In addition, farmers have been encouraged to rotate their crops so that the larvae do not have enough time to build up a population on any one crop. Crop rotation is an effective method of controlling the African sugarcane borer because it prevents the larvae from becoming established on a particular crop. By rotating crops, farmers can disrupt the life cycle of the borer and prevent it from reaching its adult stage. This reduces the number of eggs that are laid and ultimately the number of larvae that hatch. Crop rotation can also help to break the life cycle of the sugarcane borer by providing alternative hosts for the larvae. If the larvae have other plants to feed on, they are less likely to infest the main crop. Farmers have traditionally relied on chemical pesticides to control the African sugarcane borer. However, these pesticides can be expensive and harmful to humans and wildlife if not used properly. In recent years, farmers have begun to use biological control methods in addition to or instead of chemical pesticides. Biological control involves the use of natural predators to control pests. For example, one parasite wasp, Cotesia flavops, has been shown to be effective at controlling the African sugarcane borer. This wasp lays its eggs in the larvae of the borer and the eggs hatch into male and female wasps. The male and female wasps mate with each other, so that the females are pregnant before they even leave the stem of the sugarcane plant. The males dig a hole out of the plant for the females, who then fly off to find a new sugarcane plant to lay their eggs in. In this way, the parasite wasp effectively kills 2 African sugarcane borers with 1 egg. Unfortunately, the African sugarcane borer continues to be a major problem for farmers in many parts of Africa. In addition to the damage it causes directly, the pest also makes the sugarcane plants more susceptible to diseases. One such disease is sugarcane smut, which is caused by the fungus Eustalago-Cytomenia. The fungus first infects the growing point of the sugarcane plant, and then it spreads throughout the vascular system. Infected plants eventually become stunted and produce masses of black spores. The spores are then carried by wind or water to infect new plants. Sugarcane smut is a particularly serious threat to the sugarcane industry because it can render entire fields of sugarcane unharvestable. The infected plants must be destroyed, and the soil in which they were growing cannot be used to grow sugarcane for at least 3 years. In recent years, the African sugarcane borer has also become resistant to some insecticides, making them less effective at controlling the pest. In order to combat this resistance, farmers have begun using a combination of different insecticides. This approach is known as Integrated Pest Management, or IPM. IPM is a method of controlling pests that uses a combination of cultural, biological, and chemical methods. The goal of IPM is to reduce the use of chemical pesticides, while still effectively controlling pests. IPM has been effective at controlling the African sugarcane borer in some areas, but the pest continues to be a problem in many parts of Africa. The African sugarcane borer is a serious threat to crops in sub-Saharan Africa. While it is most commonly associated with sugarcane, it is actually a polyphagous pest that feeds on a wide variety of plants. The larvae of the African sugarcane borer live inside the stems of their host plants, where they weaken the plants and make them more vulnerable to disease. While the African sugarcane borer has been controlled somewhat through the use of pesticides and biological control methods, it continues to be a major problem for farmers in many parts of Africa. The insect's ability to develop resistance to pesticides means that farmers must constantly be on guard against new outbreaks. In addition, the African sugarcane borer is a highly adaptable creature which can survive in a variety of habitats. This allows it to infest crops over a wide geographical area. The African sugarcane borer has had a profound impact on the history of Africa, and it remains a major challenge for farmers today. Thank you for watching. Do you find this video interesting? Tell us in the comments below. And if you haven't already, don't forget to subscribe. See you next time.